I'm Arliss Harem. I'm with Chapter 27 in Minneapolis, and we're here this afternoon with Save Our VA, the SOVA project. SOVA's been involved, the VFB has been involved with SOVA since 2014. I myself have been since 2020. Get my dates straight. We've been fighting privatization since 2014, but this last 6 months, this last eternity with the Trump administration is privatization on steroids. They're coming after VA healthcare, they're coming after VA benefits, coming after VA research across the board. Today we have 3 people who are going to talk to you about the threats of the VA. First will be Paul Sullivan, who will talk about VA benefits. I'm going to let you guys read detailed bios in your programs so we have more time for speakers, but he has worked for the VA and he's worked for years with lawyers in getting veterans their VA benefits. So I will let Paul take it from here.
And I'm glad to be here with friends, Suzanne and Paul and other folks. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Sullivan, and I am here as a retired old guy and a veteran and a member of Veterans for Peace to talk about how we can resist attacks on our veterans in VA, of course, by the Trump administration. I am going to focus specifically on the Veterans Benefits Administration. That's the agency with about 30,000 employees and a budget of about $250 billion. Yes, war is expensive, and that's what I'm going to do. All right, so next slide up about Paul.
Give me a sec.
Just so everybody knows, I'm a Gulf War veteran. I was a scout in the invasion of Iraq, and I've been working on veteran advocacy for more than 30 years. Everything from the Persian Gulf Veterans Act to the PACT Act to suicide prevention. Okay, next slide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly describe what's VBA, just so we know that VBA is benefits and money, and it's not VHA, the hospitals and healthcare, and it's definitely not NCA, which is the National Cemetery Administration. So I'm going to go over the first threat, Project 2025, the second threat, the Congressional Budget Office cuts, the third threat, PACT Act cuts, the fourth threat, how DOGE has stolen lots of VA data and what they're going to do with it. The fifth threat, and how VBA has a serious racism and systemic problem, denying Black and other minority claims at higher rates than those for whites. And then I'm going to talk about criminal claim sharks, and then wrap up about what we can do for veterans to hopefully save the New Deal and save VA. Okay, next slide, please. All right, just to make sure we're all okay on the same sheet of music, the Veterans Benefits Administration runs all the non-medical VA programs except the cemeteries. So here's some quick stats on VA, how many living veterans there are, and of those 18 million living veterans, about 1/3, more than 6 million, are receiving VA disability compensation payments for service-related medical conditions. And there's some other stats about what VA does. Okay, next slide. Threat number 1. This is the big one, the existential threat. And what I've done here is put up some headlines just so we understand the level of chaos created by President Trump and by the new VA Secretary Doug Collins, who is a far-right Republican extremist. He believes in theocracy, and he is viciously opposed to equal rights for women, Blacks, and LGBTQ. So let's just start off at the top. Right when Trump came in, they fired 1,000 VA, then they fired 1,400 more. Then the next month, they said they would fire 83,000 more. And by May, 4 months later, VA morale was tanking. Not to be outdone, then Trump pushed another 30,000 staff out in July. Then a whistleblower came out and said, all those savings and cut contracts at VA, well, It cost government and taxpayers more money to shut off those contracts than were actually saved by shutting off those contracts. In other words, it was all a big lie. Again, earlier this month, VA confirmed that it has forced out 7,500 employees, early retirements, stress on the job, making them report into work when they were work from home, and other dubious anti-worker tactics. And the next thing that's happening, this is just a couple of days ago, VA said that VA would reclassify 24,000 staff. In other words, lowering their pay grade in most cases, for example, from a GS-14 to a GS-13, or another employee from a GS-7 to a GS-6, just doing it. No plan, nothing in writing. They're just going to do it in the hopes that MAGA, Trump, Doge, Collins, that they push out more VA employees. And remember, about a third of VA employees are veterans. Now, here's the big question about all these folks that VA and Trump are firing and pushing out the door who are dedicated, wonderful VA staff. We don't know how many are from VBA because VA, the secretary, and his staff are refusing to answer questions from Congress, refusing to answer questions from veterans groups, and refusing to respond to Freedom of Information Act requests or questions from reporters. So it's like talking to a blank wall. All right, let's move on to threat number 2. CBO stands for the Congressional Budget Office. The Republicans asked CBO what can be done to slash veteran disability benefits. Well, the first one's called means testing. If a veteran earns any money, let's say $50,000 a year, then VA will cut off the benefits. Age testing. If a veteran is older than the retirement age of, say, 65, unless, of course, the retirement age is raised, then VA will cut off benefits. Percentage testing. If a veteran is rated less than 30%, well, VA will just say, we're not going to pay you, veteran. It's not worth the bureaucracy to send you a check every month. And then finally, number 4, tax benefits. One of the Republican proposals is to have VA benefits become taxable. Right now, they're not. Okay, now let's slash to the next threat. And I know this is very distressing news. War is very expensive, and what I really want to let everyone know is the Republicans and Trump simply don't want to pay for it. They know the veterans are suffering. We know our conditions are related to our service in the war. The Republicans just don't want to pay. And that's just absolutely tragic. Okay, what's the PACT Act? That's the bill that extended benefits for Gulf War illness, burn pits, Agent Orange, radiation, and a lot more. There's been one vote so far in Congress in 2025, and all 217 Republicans voted to take away almost $23 billion in PACT Act funding. Absolutely unconscionable. And there's the roll call vote if anybody wants to see it. Okay, threat number 4. We all know Musk. I think he might be in our rear view mirror, but his group of 20-somethings who sit in the basement and are incels and far right-wing people, they stole VA data. They stole VA health data, benefits data, and personnel data. So what are the Doge and Musk people doing with this? Well, they're looking for ways to fire staff and to cut benefits. And on point number 2 down there, you'll see one VA-based Doge employee said it was all smoke and mirrors. Nobody was actually doing anything to save money. All of this, claim by Trump and Collins of freight waste and abuse, it's all nonsense. There's no there. This PR lie of fraud, waste, and abuse is just their expense to hack away with a meat cleaver on VA so that the rich and the Republicans can pay for tax cuts for the rich. All right, now threat number 5. We're running through these really fast, and they're pretty serious. The VBA denies black veteran claims at a much higher rate than white veteran disability claims. And there's the report number if anybody wants to look it up. Well, Trump in January signed this anti-DEI executive order. From there, Trump and Collins closed VBA's Office of Equity and Assurance that was looking into why black claims were denied at a much higher rate. Well, we'll never know, because Trump and Collins, frankly, let's be clear here, are bigots. They do not want to have benefits for veterans, and they absolutely, certainly don't want any benefits for our Black and minority and LGBT veterans. So again, in July of 2025, the last bullet there, the Guardian newspaper is describing how the Department of Veterans Affairs is roiled because of all the horrendous and bigoted policies that are being adopted by Trump and Collins at VA. All right, the next one is criminal claim sharks, threat number 6. Well, let's be clear, everyone. If a person assists a veteran with filing a VA claim, that person has to be pre-approved by VA. And the VFW and the Legion and the DAV, the big veterans groups, they're all approved by VA. Well, there's a special group of people who are not approved by VA. And if you're not approved by VA to help a veteran with the claim, that person is committing a crime. It's a greedy betrayal of veterans to steal their benefits. Well, how big is the problem? Well, there are about 200 claim shark groups. For about 8 years, I was the subject matter expert for the law firm I worked at, as well as the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the American Legion, on researching claim sharks. What do these claim sharks do? They steal about $1 billion in VA benefits from our disabled veterans. And VA does nothing. And it gets worse. These claim sharks use the money that they stole from veterans to donate millions to Trump and Republicans so that they can legalize stealing more from veterans. Now, is there legislation to stop the claim sharks? Yes, but the Republicans have blocked it. The only folks really working hard to stop these voracious criminals, these claim sharks, are the VFW and the Democrats. All right, those are the big threats right now to VBA. What I wanted to do is carve out just a second here for Paul's pet project, and that's VA's Veterans Crisis Line. The Republicans really don't like that because, well, it's helping veterans. So the Republicans had a hearing to attack the Veteran Crisis Line. What I want to do is make sure everyone here at Veterans for Peace knows that the Veterans Crisis Line works. After Veterans for Common Sense sued VA in 2007, VA set up 988 and press 1. And if you look at the screen, almost 400,000 veterans have been saved by calling this number and getting help with a trained VA counselor. So right now, since 2007, 18 years, VA is averaging saving 80 veterans in crisis every day. Could you just simply imagine if there was no VA crisis line? So my ask to everybody here is please take 2 seconds and add 988, press 1 in your phone. You don't have to be the person, the veteran doesn't have to be the person that calls. You can call, a family member can call, a friend, get the 988 staff on the phone, hand the phone to the veteran, say, here, I called for you, talk to them. That's how easy and it works. So here's the wrap up, and just about right about out of time here. What's happening right now is the greatest threat to the Department of Veterans Affairs since it existed in the 1980s, and before that, when it was founded as the Veterans Administration in 1930. VA is part of the New Deal, okay? The Republicans want to kill the New Deal, okay? What we need to do as veterans is know we need to follow the news carefully. And goodness gracious, share facts, but not Fox, okay? They're reporting everything bad about VA so that Trump and Collins can shut down VA. The message to veterans is very clear. If you need an appointment, call VA, go to your appointment. If you need benefits, file your claim. If a veteran is in distress, call 988, okay? What else can we veterans do? ask reporters to cover these Trump and Republican attacks on veterans in VA. And look, we know Congress is controlled by Republicans right now, but there's a few who are wavering, and obviously all the Democrats are supporting veterans. Well, write Congress and demand a fully funded, fully staffed VA, not contractors. That means stopping the privatization of VA. Also, the third bullet there, demand that Congress prosecute these claim sharks stealing $1 billion a year from veterans. And then I wrap up with this really nice quote here from U.S. Labor Secretary Frances Perkins. If you ever really want to read about a hero, she's one. She was head of the Labor Department under FDR and is credited as being one of the architects of the New Deal. She said, "The people are what matter to government. And the government should aim to give all the people under its jurisdiction the best possible life." And I want to let you know, this attack by Trump and MAGA, Doge and Musk, it is an existential threat to shut down the VA so that billionaires get a tax break, and there's just nothing else to add to that. So I'll wrap up with questions at the end after everyone else has spoken. So thank you very much for the opportunity to do this. And I turn this over back to the moderator. Thanks.
You're good. Okay, thank you, Paul. That was very good. Threats to the VA benefit system are big, and so are the threats to the VA healthcare system. And
Your microphone's not on.
She doesn't have a microphone, she just has to speak loud.
Should be good now. Start again?
Start again?
Yeah.
Okay, I would say thank you to Paul again then. The threats to the VA benefit system are huge. The threats to the VA healthcare system are equally huge. And Suzanne Gordon, who's probably known to most, if not all of you, SOVA, for us, we could not work without Suzanne and the Veterans Healthcare Policy Institute. The analysis that they do is clear, concise, current, and wonderful, and we need help getting it out further. And I won't talk any more about Suzanne, but let her talk to you about the threats to VA healthcare.
Hi, thank you. Can everybody see my presentation? Although I think I got it not
Yes.
on right. So wait, slideshow. Okay. Sorry. Hi. I'm not very good at slideshows. So I got to get Paul Sullivan to show me how to make some fancy slides. Paul is one of the steering committee members on the VHPI steering committee, and he's just got so much knowledge about VA. I'm going to focus on healthcare, and I'm going to go really quickly through it. But I think not enough veterans even, and certainly not enough Americans understand what the VHA, the VA healthcare system is and does, and that it's a universal socialized medicine healthcare system, and it's a healthcare system, not just a medical treatment system. And as someone who's written about healthcare for something like 35 years, there's a real difference between what we have in the private sector, which is an episodic, poorly run, fragmented medical treatment system, and a healthcare system, and which includes medical care, but also goes way beyond it in dealing with people's psychosocial problems, people's mental health problems, people's housing, people's legal problems, and so forth. Its incentives are completely different than the U.S. Insurance and regular healthcare system, which is driven by profit, not mission-driven or by patient care. And the Trump administration is determined to literally privatize the whole thing. I think it's very important, and people in SOVA recognize that the privatization of VA healthcare has been really a bipartisan effort. The Mission Act, which was passed in 2018, was supported by an overwhelming majority of Democrats, and that is what accelerated the outsourcing of care of veterans to private sector providers and created this parallel healthcare system called the Veterans Community Care Program. But Trump is really determined to completely privatize it. The Democrats have been very good for the past 5 months. Tragically, they were not very good during Biden's administration. And to be completely fair, I blame Dennis McDonough for a lot of what we're seeing today because he had the opportunity to use administrative, to use the administrative state to really reverse a lot of the problems that Trump introduced, and he didn't. And he really actually pursued a lot of Trump policies. And now they're coming in with, as Paul Sullivan said, a wrecking ball to destroy it all. And really, Paul is right. I mean, existential threat, what Paul means, and forgive me, Paul, for putting words in your mouth, but you can say existential and you sort of think of Jean-Paul Sartre sitting in a cafe in Paris, and smoking Gauloise and drinking absinthe, and it's all sort of existential. It's like, oh, we're going to talk about philosophy. No, this is excellent. We are going to shoot it at this system and at veterans. So why is this not moving? What do I have to do here to get this to move? Oh boy. Hold on. I'm gonna escape. I can't. That doesn't even work.
Try one of your cursor arrows.
What?
Try using your cursor to the left or the right.
Oh, okay. All right. So the VA is a unique system. I hope you can see this, but it really deals with everything. I mean, you've got somebody doing yoga, you've got somebody with PTSD, you've got somebody getting prosthetics. It's comprehensive health care. It's everything, forever, at least from discharge to grave. It has all kinds of various interconnected organizations, Office of Women's Health, Office of Innovation, Office of Equity. It's the only healthcare system in the country. I know Trump has made equity a dirty word, but it's the only healthcare system in the country that actually does equity as opposed to talk about equity. And what's interesting is that equity doesn't just mean equity for minorities or people of color. Equity means how come rural white Americans can't get good health care, right? That's also equity. And I think that one of the things we need to do is sort of expand the definition of equity. But Doug Collins wants to do away with all that, right? He's fired probationary employees. He's encouraged VA employees to resign and pursue. Literally, they sent out a letter saying, working in the federal government and in the VA, taking care of veterans, is not enhancing American prosperity. This is quotes. And we encourage you to pursue more productive work elsewhere. I mean, so we need to help veterans understand that, the people who are trying to, pretend that they're, on the side of veterans view caring for veterans as unproductive work that does not contribute to American prosperity. I mean, they canceled hundreds of critical contracts, perhaps even thousands. They're now, I think, reviewing 5,000 new contracts going on to 40,000. And we're talking about contracts for, IV fluid and cleaning supplies. They canceled a contract for a group of people in Togus, Maine, at the Togus VA, that were supervising and assuring the safety of radiation, like MRI machines, and the radiation that you get when you're getting radiation treatment for prostate cancer. They've just taken a sledgehammer And then somebody pointed out, hey, this is kind of important, and then they had to back off. They fired and halted essential VA research. They've halted trials that help people, develop new treatments for cancer. They were threatening a trial that was researching the use of a generic drug that would be very cheap, that would help people avoid dialysis and transplant for kidney disease. And as many people know, millions of veterans suffer from diabetes. One of the risks is to your kidneys. There's no one but the VA that would do this kind of critical research because it's a generic drug. They would be using a very cheap generic. So there's no money in this, and nobody would do it but the VA, and they're threatening that kind of research. And for no, good reason. And this whole, I got a call from a reporter the other day who wanted to know, well, these deferred resignations, it looks like they're not letting people resign who are nurses and doctors and clinicians, but they're accepting resignations for people who are doing IT or who are doing billing or who are doing other work that they consider to not be important. You cannot run a hospital without plumbers and and housekeepers disinfecting hospital rooms and exam rooms, and people who are coders and billers and clerks scheduling appointments. And they've somehow convinced the media that you could somehow just have a bunch of doctors and nurses and surgeons running around a hospital, and that's okay. And that somehow, I don't know, they're supposed to be answering the phone while they're operating on your brain. Excuse me, there's no clerk, I got it. It's okay, Paul. Just wait a minute. Oh, you're unconscious. I don't have to worry about you. It's like, just goes to show how stupid these people are and how little they know about healthcare, that they don't understand that you need these people to run a healthcare system. Of course, they don't want to run the healthcare system. They want to kill the healthcare system. And I also had to remind this person that, well, it's not just about the people that they're firing or trying to fire or not succeeding in firing because there's lawsuits and this and that. It's what is the message that they're sending to people who are working in VA or might want to work in VA. And the message that they're sending is, don't work here. We don't want you. Your job could be threatened at any moment. So don't stay. And also don't sign on, to come work here to fill a position. And I have heard a lot of stories that people who are being recruited are not accepting jobs. So this is a very, serious development. One of the things that I really focus on is that this privatization effort is based on a myth, on a false promise. And the false promise is that there's thousands of competent providers out there, doctors, nurses, hospitals, psychologists, OTs, PTs, etc., just thousands of them all over the place, all over the country, ready and willing to take care of VA patients. That is what they are selling veterans. You will find high-quality providers who will deliver more timely care than the VA in more conveniently located places, particularly if you live in rural and remote rural areas. You're not going to have to drive 3 hours, 2 hours to get to a doctor or a psychologist. And they're just waiting to take care of you, and they just want to take care of you, and they're able to take care of you and competent. Really? What are the facts? I just spent the last 4 months doing a study called The False Promise of VA Privatization for VHPI, in which I looked at all 50 states, the availability of primary care providers, specialist physicians, mental health professionals and hospital care throughout the United States. And the facts, I mean, I've been fighting for universal health care for years. I've known that our healthcare system is broken. I had no idea because I never did such a deep dive into every single state. And the facts are, you know, it's a staggering picture of no care there. Veterans, if we kill the VA, veterans to whom we made a promise, you know, no matter what we think of the war that we started and got them into, we made a promise that we take care of them. They have largely, those lucky enough to be in VA, and that is not all veterans, as Paul Sullivan helps us understand, they will be fed, they have been sheltered, the 9 million people who are now enrolled in VA, and the 6 million people who depend on it from a broken, collapsing healthcare system. And now they will be fed into a healthcare system that has the highest death rates for avoidable treatable conditions of any high-income nation in the world. A healthcare system where people see physicians less frequently, the lowest rates of practicing physicians in the industrialized world, and the fewest hospital beds per thousand, and the highest suicide rates in the industrialized world. We will be feeding veterans into a system that has primary care shortage. 83 million people, 25% of Americans, live in areas without enough healthcare providers, and 79 million, that's 23% of the US population and 30% of the adult population, live in areas with shortages of primary care providers. I mean, I don't know about the folks listening to this, but when my primary care doctor in the Bay Area in California retired at whatever age he was, because he'd had it, you know, I had a terrible time finding a new primary care provider. I mean, I know doctors who are signing on to, you know, to work in California, like at UCSF or something. They can't, they're doctors, they cannot find somebody to take care of them. The new incoming president of the AMA had trouble finding a primary care doctor. I mean, this is like serious stuff, you know, these are people who are doctors, right? If this is just one of the maps, healthcare professional shortage maps provided by the Rural Health Information Hub that I have in my document that's going to be released in about a week. And if you look at this, this is the picture of primary care in just one state, Tennessee. And all that dark blue is severe shortages of primary care doctors or nurse practitioners or physician assistants. I mean, there is no care there. The sort of darkish blue is partial shortages, which means it's hardly any care there. And the light blue, which is a couple of counties, is there may be primary care practices if you're lucky enough that the doctor is not about to retire or isn't close to new patients, which, you know. So that's Tennessee, where Marsha Blackburn, you know, Senator Marsha Blackburn is on the VA committee and is supporting some privatizing bills and just apparently doesn't know or doesn't care about what's going on in her own state, which, by the way, ranks 10th in the United States for how bad their healthcare system is. In mental health, we don't have a mental health care system outside of the VA. Thomas Insel, who retired, I think it was 2015, as the director of the National Institutes of Mental Health, said that the mental health system in our country is so broken that it's the equivalent of a civil rights issue. Jails and prisons house the majority of the mentally ill. And only 55% of American counties have, 55% of American counties overall have no psychiatrist, psychologist, or social worker. Only 55% of psychiatrists accept insurance of any kind. A third of psychologists don't accept insurance of any kind. And 6 out of 10 psychologists aren't accepting new patients. And so, you know, this idea that there's going to be all these mental health providers to welcome VA patients at VA payment rates, which are Medicare payment rates. I mean, they won't even accept payment rates above Medicare because they can function, because there's so many rich and ultra-rich people in this country that many psychiatrists and psychologists, particularly in urban areas where most of them are located, can function with just a population of patients who can afford $350, $500 an hour. You cannot find a psychologist in the Bay Area or anywhere else practically that does CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the gold standard treatments for PTSD, insomnia, and many other problems, that will accept any kind of healthcare insurance in the Bay Area. They don't. So if you don't have $325 an hour to shell out for 20 sessions, you're out of luck. In the United States, 123 million people, that's 1/3 of the population, almost 47% of the adult population live in mental health professional shortage areas. Rural counties are more likely than urban counties to lack psychiatric mental health NPs, psychologists, social workers, and counties. And among rural counties, 81% do not have a single psychiatric nurse practitioner, and 65% do not have a single psychiatrist. So where are we gonna get care? I mean, even if you thought it was the best idea since sliced bread, to send veterans out to the private sector, even if you thought that was a great idea, where are you going to get care? And one of the main things that it's important to do when we talk to veterans or your fellow veterans, I mean, I'm not a veteran, fellow and sister veterans, is explain to them that if you are one of the 25% of veterans who lives in a rural or remote rural area, and you have chosen to live in that rural or remote rural area because you don't want to see a lot of people, some of the lot of people that you aren't going to be able to see are cardiologists and gynecologists and family practice docs and nurses. And just like, there is no way that you can get a conveniently located cardiologist to do your coronary artery bypass graft in a county where there's 90 vets, because there's just not enough population to maintain skills, and to make a living. And a lot of veterans, they seem to think that they can go around the corner and get a CABG, a coronary artery bypass graft. That's when they. And I mean, you don't want to get a coronary artery bypass graft around the corner in a highly rural area, because you want the cardiac surgeon to have done, 2,000 a year, not one a year. And this is very hard to help people understand. And if we look at mental health shortages, Tennessee, I'm picking on Tennessee, same situation. Look at this. I mean, it's a joke. And in these places, there may appear to be a few psychologists or psychiatrists, but half of them won't, or many of them won't accept insurance or are closed to new patients. So what are the dangers? I say dangers ahead, but there are dangers now, and what can we do? Costs for potentially inferior care to veterans will soar because you have a fee-for-service system that is paid to give either inferior care or dangerous care. If you are a veteran who has prostate cancer, that's what we call clinically insignificant prostate cancer, which means that you're more likely to die getting hit by a bus than you are from your prostate cancer, and you go to a private sector doctor, you're very likely not to get standard of care, which is given at the VA, but it's not practiced in the private sector where fee-for-service may disincentivize it. So you're much more likely to get not watchful waiting, but a prostatectomy, surgery, or invasive radiation. That's dangerous. It's dangerous to give people stuff they don't need, right? You could kill them. Eligibility, as Paul has said, will be further restricted. And costs will soar not only because they'll give you more stuff that you don't need, but once the VA disappears, all these people who say they're willing to take lower rates because the VA is there and there's sort of competition, guess what's going to happen when the VA isn't there? Suddenly they're not going to take those rates, so costs will soar because of that. Veterans will be forced to pay more out of pocket. They won't get good care. Services will be curtailed and VA facilities will close. The lifeblood of a hospital or healthcare system is its patients and its staff. If you don't have enough patients, then there's no point in having the hospital. If you don't have enough staff, then you can't have more patients, and then there's no point. And the other thing that I didn't put down in the slide is that the critical role that VA plays in teaching American healthcare professionals in training. VA trains 70% of American doctors, over 50% of psychologists. It's the largest educator of nurses in the country, an employer of psychologists and nurses in the country. And in order to maintain these programs, in order for them to be accredited, you have to have enough patients for them to see with enough diversity of cases, and you have to have enough staff to supervise them. And so all these people that Collins wants to hire will erode the American healthcare training, educational training program in the entire country, and all of us, veterans and non-veterans alike, will suffer. There will be no one to teach healthcare professionals about veteran-specific conditions, and there will be fewer providers produced in an era when we have massive shortages of all sorts of healthcare providers. And the VA will become an insurance payer, not a provider and insurance payer. So what do? We have to mobilize friends and family, and we have to continue and expand what you all in VFP and SOVA are doing. I am and the unions, and Linda will talk about what they're doing, but I'm very heartened because I think that suddenly veterans and suddenly many people are thinking, oh, I didn't think he was really going to do this. You know, Trump, he's all bluster. He's not going to do all these things. And now he's doing it, and they don't like it. VHPI did a survey, a very small Facebook outreach campaign to veterans in 8, I believe, swing states around Project 2025. And we reached about 60,000 vets. We didn't have much money, so we couldn't do a massive campaign. And basically, the vets that responded on Facebook to us were largely MAGA vets, and not a single one of them who responded said, Project 2025 is the greatest thing since sliced bread, you people are crazy. No, what they all said is, you people are crazy, he will never do this. He will never do this. And he's doing it. And so they are realizing that he's doing it, and they're not happy. And so I think we can do a lot of pushback, going to town meetings, standing in front of VAs. There are hundreds of people all over the country standing in front of VAs, protesting cuts and any threats to the system. And these people are not often usual suspects. So we have to beef this up, and beat them up. Because the worst thing that we face, I think, is not Trump, but the worst thing we face is hopelessness. and this idea that there's nothing that can be done. And we have watched them step back. I mean, we at VHPI, did a lot of work on the research that they were cutting, and they stepped back on some of it. And their tendency is to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And our job is to make it not stick. Our job is to mobilize for 2026. And I believe our job is to get to the Democrats and say, if you people get back in office, you cannot go back to the status quo ante, because the status quo ante is what gave us Donald Trump. We have to have our own vision for the VA, and what we need is an expanded VA. All veterans should be covered, not just a few, a certain elect few. And all VA hospitals need to be better staffed. There probably need to be more of them. There need to be more community-based outpatient clinics, and sometimes they may even need to be able to accommodate non-VA patients, like the one in White River Junction, Vermont, which is welcoming patients who can't get mental health care in Vermont. So I'm very heartened. I'm so heartened because of VFP and working with unions. There's the Federal Unionist Network is wonderful. And I think there's a tremendous amount we can do, and I think we can beat these people back, and I think we can do more than beat them back. I think we can mobilize to get the kind of healthcare system in the VA that veterans need, and the kind of healthcare system in the United States that we all need, which looks a whole lot like the VA. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne, especially for that ending note. We could not do it without Suzanne. They are wonderful. Our last panelist, I'm sorry?
Can you talk a little louder, artist?
I don't have a big
You want to give her the
voice.
mic? Let's just give her the
Closer
mic.
to the mic.
The mic is not, we haven't been using the mic today, but we're going to pull it out for sure, for
Well,
ours.
let me just get to the last speaker. Linda, I'm very good at it. Ward Smith. Got it.
Ward Smith, all right.
Yeah. Anyway, she's here, lives here in Las Vegas. She's a VA nurse, works with the Community Care Program. She is president of the local AFGE, American Federation of Government Employees. And she's going to talk to you about staff, and staff concerns and what's going on with them. And I'll let her talk.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I hope I'm loud enough. Can y'all hear me in the back? Yes. No? Oh. Use the mic.
Use your nurse voice.
That's a quiet voice.
Some of us are harder of hearing than others.
The VA needs to provide hearing care.
Testing. Better. Okay. Alrighty. So not only am I a nurse, but I'm the union president here as well. So we get kind of loud and rowdy. But so my name is Linda Ward Smith. I am a registered nurse, and I've been working at the VA here for almost 20 years. I've been the local president since 2017, but been a unionist all of my life. Born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. So, but I was just here to talk about what is going on in our staffing at the VA. Suzanne and Paul, they gave you a lot of data, a lot of real life stuff that's really going on in the VA system. And I'm just excited that we have an opportunity to work with you guys to bridge the gaps and hopefully save the VA. So, as you probably have seen in the news, they've been laying people off, threatening to fire, and our therapists, our nurses, our just support staff are like scared to death sometimes because they don't know what's going to happen. So nationally, we've lost over 30,000 employees, but the number is growing, to be honest. There was this threat about 80,000 that was going to be fired, and they held that over everybody's head, and so people quit because they literally, the checkout says, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and they're scared to death. And we shouldn't have to do that. The morality, we can't get people to want to come to the VA because of what's in the news right now. Am I really going to have a job? I'm on probation. They've extended the probationary period to 2 years and not 1 year. So in the middle of serving your probation, you find out you're on probation. So that's the kind of stuff that's going on in the VA. You guys know about the return to work order, where we had psychologists that were hired to do remote work, taking care of the veterans, telehealth, all that stuff that we praise, especially for our rural veterans that don't really have access. Telehealth works, right? However, you know, we got providers now being told that they don't have a remote job, and they're quitting, right? Because that's not what they signed up to do. And it's really putting a big stress on the other employees that are left behind. They're asked to do more and do more and do more. Suzanne said it. The support staff are leaving, so then the nurses now have to what? Mop the floors. The doctor's now going to be expected to cook the food. I mean, where are we going here with this? And so we just wanted to bring that to your attention. Now, I am a president for AFGE, which is the American Federation of Government Employees. I don't know if you guys have heard of us. However, we're the ones out here getting attacked the most. And the reason is because, number one, we represent most of the federal employees, almost what, 800 plus thousand. And if they get rid of us, who are supposed to be the overseers of the money, public interest, veterans' interest, then they can go ahead and do what they need to do as far as privatizing the VA. And so we're stopping that. And we're fighting daily to push back on all of these bad laws and regulations we have. If you Google us, you'll see the amount of court cases we have going on right now. They literally just tried to just wipe out our whole contract and just say, nope, no union, we don't need you. But we are the ones standing in the gaps to make sure that the public interest is protected. And so we want you guys to help fight for us and with us, stand on that line and just help protect our VA. And so that is why I'm here today, just to ask that when you see something out there where AFGE is fighting, we need you to call your member of Congress, just join in the fight with us so we can save our VA. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Well, in just a minute.
Questions? Okay.
Just a minute. Probably need the mic again.
Go for it.
Okay. Before we ask questions, I just want to add to Linda's plea. The threat to the VA is the greatest it's been, but the opportunity is also the greatest it's been. There is that interest out there. A lot of you are doing stuff, the rallies, the support. We need that more. SOVA committee is small, very small. And on August 30th, we're going to have a special Zoom meeting, inviting people who want to do something to bring your ideas and start doing them. We get lots of ideas, but we don't need people willing to implement the ideas they have. We need people willing to do both. There'll be a link in the next update. There'll be, you can contact me, you can contact SOVA, email. We really need people to help out. It is a time. We need to educate veterans. We need to educate the public. We need to educate Congress. And we need to push with Congress. And we need more people from Republican and swing districts. We need you to send the letters in the update. We need you to call the congressman. They need to hear from people in support of the VA, not just from people who complain about the VA and the problems that they have. So we'll be asking for help from you. It is the time. We need to mobilize. And with that, take questions.
Okay, I'm bringing people up.
Yep.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say, you may be small, but you have a large voice. And it's a roar. I just want to say also, Linda, the next panel, we're going to have a labor group, and we're going to have a former nurse, VA nurse on that labor panel, and who is a union representative with the American Federation of Government Employees. And we've stood side by side in protesting these things. So, and I'd like to just say for people here, I wear that shirt when I go to the VA every time, and there's nurses and doctors that are asking me where can they get that shirt, because they know now that this is really an attack upon them, and I'm getting thumbs up wherever I go. Even flying here to this convention, because you represent government employees, that even is TSA. TSA sees me wearing that shirt, they're going thumbs up. The people on the plane are going thumbs up and ask me what was I doing, what was this about. So wear the shirt, get out there, and people start asking you questions, you can start talking about it. But I want to thank you so much for doing the work you're doing here.
So that everybody, so that nobody's invisible. Yeah, there we go. And we'll just bring that in.
I make a comment, and that is, I'm from Santa Rosa, California. We have a wonderful VA clinic there, and when you're out, support the clinic. Talk not only to the veterans that are going in, but also to the staff. We are blessed to have a 25-year experience nurse practitioner right here beside me, and Helen, and she is the newest member of Chapter Veterans for Peace.
All right.
Yes, I have a recommendation. I would like your opinion on it. I live in a nursing home in Gainesville, Florida. We have 40 veterans because in many of the states, the nursing homes have veteran clubs and stuff like that. And my sense is that the vast majority of veterans who come to these homes don't know what their rights are. And so I've taken not a lot, but I've taken some veterans to our Gainesville VA and gotten them signed up. And so the question is, do you see a place within within Veterans for Peace, the group, to put out information to nursing homes? Because all that I know about, and I've been in 4, all of them have veterans groups. Do you see a place that you could put out this information that you've talked about and the speakers have, so that people like me and others could get to all the veterans so they know, because most of them just are clueless, in my opinion.
In some sense, you just talked about exactly what I'm saying. It's a great idea in getting veterans, retired veterans, active duty veterans, young veterans to know if there's no VA, there's no data collected, and your healthcare problems resulting from your military service, you won't get benefits, you won't get recognition, because there's no data to say it happened. Veterans need to know, but it's the kind of thing, we need some help. It's a great idea, but we need some help, bodies to help implement the idea. Take it with you. It's there. You want to work on it? Take it and go.
Well, I think it also, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think it also is important for people to understand too that the VA runs nursing homes. I mean, one of the biggest problems is that people think, Collins and Trump and all these people just think, they conceptualize the VA as a bunch of hospital beds and exam rooms and doctors and nurses. And they don't understand comprehensive coordinated care, because, actually they've never had it probably. because they don't go to the VA. And we need to help people understand that the VA is way more than a collection of doctors and nurses. And you know, in part of the problem that the VA has had, and I've been, you know, worried about this for years, is that the VA is always touting its connection to academic medical centers. Like, you know, you go to the VA and you get doctors from UCSF, or you go to the VA and, you know, Jamaica Plain and you have doctors from Harvard. And so, you know, what people don't understand is while those doctors may practice at UCSF or Harvard or you know, University of Pennsylvania or wherever, they practice completely differently when they're in a VA hospital because it's a different model of care. And we have to help people understand that the VA isn't just a collection of hospitals, you know, and doctors' offices. It's community living centers, nursing homes. It's 250 residential treatment programs, you know, or sites of residential treatment programs, and homelessness and PTSD, and, you know, it's spinal cord injury centers and polytrauma units and blind rehab centers, and on and on and on. And where are they going to replicate the blind rehab, you know, centers that don't exist in the private sector and will never exist? Polytrauma units, how many people even know that VA polytrauma units take care of active duty service members? I mean, Paul Sullivan knows, I know, but, you know, I mean, what are those people going to do? The VA has an MOU with the Department of Defense to do rehab for active duty service members because the Army, I mean, the military health system doesn't do rehab because they don't do chronic care. Because, like, if you're sick enough that you're so sick that you need rehab over years, you ain't going to be in the military anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's extremely important. And at VHPI, we have a document that we need to get out where, you know, Congress people need to be asked, okay, you're going to get rid of the VA, or how are you going to tell veterans in the private sector, primary care practice, how to apply for compensation, you know, for Agent Orange exposure or burn pit exposure. These doctors in the private sector, their billing people may know that they're treating a veteran. They don't necessarily know. I'm 79 years old. I could have been like Arliss, a nurse in Vietnam. I have never once been asked if I was in the military. My husband could have been in the military. He's 76. And he's never been asked if he's been in the military. They don't know who's a veteran. And so they don't even know who they're treating. And I think that when we organize, you know, when we talk to these members of Congress, we have to say to the staffer, or if you're lucky enough to get a member of Congress, okay, you want to do away with the VA, how can you do spinal cord injury? What about the residential rehab, you know, treatment programs? What about polytrauma? What about blind rehab? What about the CLCs? And now with this, I didn't say this, but, you know, all those stats I gave you, and all the stats that are in this massive document I've been working on, these are pre-Big Beautiful Bill stats. So if you think things are bad now, baby, wait, you know, a year. And it is, and you know, you don't even have to wait a year because hospitals are already shedding staff. So another point that we need to make when we're organizing and we're talking to Congress people is, if you are pro-veteran, quote unquote, why are you firing, you know, like millions of veterans? I mean, you know, from their jobs. And if you think that Linda Ward Smith, after let's say Linda was a vet, and if you think that after the Big Beautiful Bill, Linda is going to be able to go over to the private sector hospital and get a job. Because they are firing people, these private sector hospitals, because of cuts in Medicaid. They're already starting to fire people in anticipation. So you are not merely cutting out their, you know, I mean, a year ago, Linda probably could go over to the hospital across the street and get a job. That's not true anymore. And these are all points that I think we have to make when we're talking to Congress people. This is a massive unemployment program for healthcare personnel.
And if veterans' benefits are cut, you will see more homeless veterans. That's just the math.
Oh yeah, and there, I mean, I didn't put this in my report, but there's these, I mean, Paul knows about this, but every state receives between, you know, many millions, many millions, and, you know, probably, and billions. Veterans in every state received millions of billions of dollars in, I mean, not each one of them, in compensation and pension money. Now, you get rid of some of that compensation money, that's going to be a big economic hit, not to mention the big economic hit of closing VAs that, you know, where the thousands and thousands of people are employed. I mean, San Francisco VA Medical Center, 3,800 people, you know, Dallas, 5,600 people, whatever. That's a big hit. I mean, in Georgia, you know, I think it's the Augusta VA, the biggest employer often in the region or in the city. That's really cool. Good idea, Donald.
Back there.
Thank you. Yes, my question is for Paul. Paul, you talked about the scam that was going on with veterans who are being taken for about $1 billion, I believe was corrected, but there's no prosecution in these cases. My question is, who is discovering the fraud? Who is supposed to refer those? Are they going to U.S. attorneys' offices and they're not prosecuting them? What's the hang up with this? Because when you have billions of dollars being taken and nothing's being done, it's just going to encourage fraud within the system. So perhaps you could address that if you would, please.
Sure. Let's first address fraud within VA, specifically claims. Having worked as a project manager at VA, I can tell you that the fraud perpetrated by veterans with a fake claim is about as close to zero as you can get. And the reason for that is that every applicant, veteran or family member of a deceased veteran, their military history is thoroughly checked with DOD. So what that means is VA won't even start to process a disability or other benefit claim until their veteran status is confirmed. And that essentially wipes out fraudulent claims. So if someone tried to submit a fake DD-214 or fake relationship with the veteran, the military is going to catch it right away. So when Doge and Musk and Trump tried to say that there was fraud, waste, and abuse by veterans within VBA, that's a lie, okay? In fact, when there is fraud, waste, and abuse, VA's Inspector General or other government agencies find it and knock it out right away. They do make headlines when it happens because it's a federal government agency and someone figured out how to steal from the agency. Now let's talk about claim sharks. Yes, there are about 200 claim shark companies. Maybe about 50 of them are big enough to be noteworthy. Why isn't VA or the Department of Justice prosecuting these criminals? Well, first, yes, it is a crime for someone to represent a veteran to prepare a claim unless that person is accredited by VA. So if a person is not accredited by VA and that person helps a veteran with a claim, that person is committing a crime. Okay? Here's the catch. In 2006, the Republicans slid an amendment into an end-of-year omnibus bill that erased the penalties for that crime. So let's just say running a stop sign is a $100 fine, or driving while drunk gets you a 6-year prison term if you're convicted by a jury. Well, if there's no fine for running the stop sign and there's no jail time for driving while drunk, what are the prosecutors going to do? There's nothing for them to do. It's a crime without a punishment. That's what the Republicans did. That's what deregulation does. Okay? And right now, in the Washington Post today, Musk's AI team and Doge are going to use AI to wipe out half of all government regulations, so to spur capitalism. Essentially what's going to happen, can you imagine if half of VA's regulations, and the book is this thick, were wiped out by a machine? Remember AI and the folks that wrote these bogus Kennedy briefs about vaccines and healthcare. I mean, AI right now, it has some good things and bad things. But when it comes to medicine and the law, no. Okay? Well, claim sharks are not prosecuted because there are no penalties. So the best the Biden folks could do was to warn veterans about the claim sharks and try to push through legislation that would restore fines and jail time for the claim sharks. However, these claim sharks are stealing so much money, about $1 billion a year. The claim sharks are using the money the claim sharks stole from veterans to bribe politicians. If you Google Trump Veterans Guardian in North Carolina, Trump held a $150,000 a plate event for claim sharks. You can't make this up. Just Google it and you'll find the news story. These claim sharks, since they're bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars a year, the big ones, they're now turning around and spending millions of dollars literally bribing Republican senators and members of Congress because what? Citizens United. Okay? So that's where we're at with these claim sharks. They're horrible people. They're criminals. They deliberately avoid getting approved by VA. They don't care about training. And all they want to do is find a veteran with an easy claim to win, charge the veteran $5,000 or $10,000 to do it, and walk on. These claim sharks don't help veterans enroll in care. They don't help veterans with appeals. They don't help veterans with complex issues like traumatic brain injury, individual unemployability, that they don't know how to do it. Okay? So claim sharks are a very, very severe problem. But because they have money and Fox News loves them, okay, they're able to make it look like they're offering veterans choice. So eventually you're going to see the demise of the veterans groups who provide higher quality and free claims assistance, because these claim sharks are so pernicious and insidious and flooding the market with really bad advertising. If you send me your email, I can send you a lesson that I prepared for the American Legion at my old job, Bergman and Moore, where I used to work, that thoroughly explains who the claim sharks are, what they do, how they steal money, and the whole 9 yards. Just drop it in the chat, and I'll let you know. But this is a huge scandal of fraud by capitalists who are exploiting VA because there are no penalties for illegal representation.
Thank you.
I hope that got you mad, right?
You know, one of the things I wonder, this is a question to Paul Sullivan, from me and anybody else in the room who, or on the workshop who wants to talk about it, but one of the things that I'm very concerned about is the total capitulation of the VSOs, notably DAV, to this, to what's going on. And, you know, they have not said boo to what's going on to kill the VA now. And I'm just wondering if there's any ways, and Paul, you have probably a lot of insights in this, and maybe other people in the room, but what I've heard is, you know, that that they're afraid of their MAGA base. They're afraid that, you know, Jerry Moran isn't going to talk to them ever again, that Doug Collins isn't going to, you know, invite them to breakfast, God forbid, whoever, you know, would want to have breakfast with him, but I would, because I would feed him some. But I think that, you know, trying to get members mobilized,
A hit of acid in his coffee.
or VFW or whatever, and can put some pressure on these groups. I mean, you can semi-understand, like, well, the Legion is completely sold out, but, you know, I mean, you know, not all members of VFW or the Legion or whatever use the VA or so forth, but DAV, Disabled American Veterans, you know, paralyzed American veterans. So I just wonder if folks in the room or if Paul Sullivan has any ideas about mounting some kind of pressure campaigns or the ability to do that, or if it would succeed or whatever.
Well, Suzanne, that really is the $460 billion question, because that's how big VA is. Right now, you would almost have to develop a scorecard or a matrix to be fair. In other words, on the issue of claim sharks, VFW gets an A. The Legion, well, D- on a good day. DAV, maybe a B, okay? But then if you went to look at privatization of VA, you'll see that DAV gets an A or a B, and maybe some of the other groups don't do so well. So it's a hot mess that the veterans groups, the big ones, are not having a collaborative, cohesive, cogent, coherent message. They just don't have one. It's a hot, ugly mess. And when someone who's a master manipulator like Trump wants to divide and conquer the veterans community, what he does is plays one veterans group against another. And we are in that state right now of the veterans groups are in significant decline. The VVA is scaling back. MVETS closed their Washington headquarters and moved to rural Pennsylvania. The military order of Purple Heart stopped processing claims. So did several other veterans groups. So again, you need to come up with a matrix on which veteran group is doing what and where they need to be contacted.
Okay, Paul, I'm sorry, I muted you because we have to end this session. It's already a half hour late and the next people are waiting for the next session. I'm sorry.
Can I recognize one person for the City of their VA program that has been working on it for over 30 to 40 years? That's Buzz Davis from Tucson.